Hello friends, it's me Maile. Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about the books I've read lately. I haven't done a book video in a while, you guys. It's kind of because I haven't read as much as I normally do because I've been busy directing a show for the past forever, it seems like. So now that I am done directing for the season, I've had some time to pick up my favorite hobby, which is reading again. And I've got a lot of really good books to share with you that I've read recently. So let's jump on in. But before we do, I will remind you, don't forget to subscribe to help us toward our goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you like book videos, if you like lifestyle videos, vlogs, go ahead and click that red subscribe button because we've got a lot of craziness here on this channel for you. Hope you'll stick around. Okay, let's get into these books. I've got 10 really, really great books to share with you that I've read recently that I think you'll like because I really liked most of them. There may be a couple in here that were duds, but we'll see. Okie dokie. So first up, I read a book I don't actually have a physical copy of, but I read Fourth Wing, which is all the rage on TikTok. Not that I would really know because I don't have a TikTok, but from the TikToks that I see a week later on Instagram, Fourth Wing is like a craze right now. And for good reason. I loved this book. It felt very, very Hunger Games-ish to me in the vibes of how the book was written, not necessarily what the story was, because the story was not like Hunger Games at all, really, but it was written in that very, very fast, simple, use as little words as possible to move the story forward in an exciting way. Honestly, it's been a while since I've read it, so let me see if I can remember the basic plot points. Basically, it's about this girl who goes to this academy pretty much against her will. She's the daughter of the governor or something. She's the daughter of some political figure, and society is built into different factions. And she always wanted to go be a scholar and go toward that faction of the society. But her mother insisted that she uphold the family name and train as, oh, what did they call them? Dragon Rider? I don't know, honestly. Like I said, it's been a while, but basically she goes to the army side of the world and trains as a fighter, essentially. And there are dragons she matches. I won't ruin it, but she makes friends with some dragons, and that relationship is really cool to see. She's kind of an outsider, but slowly kind of makes her way, makes some friends, develops a relationship with a really seemingly sketchy dude. There are some hints of a revolution and some sort of conflict brewing under the surface. It's a very, very good first book in a series setup. It was very exciting plotline. It had some hints of what's to come in the future of the series. It had a great budding romance, and then the end is really awesome. The end totally transforms you to someplace else and starts what will be the conflict of, I think, the overarching conflict of the whole series, and certainly the start of the next book with kind of a shocking surprise re-entrance of a character at the end. And man, it's just such a good book, a really quick read, very exciting, action-packed. I really loved the characters. It deserves the hype that it's getting, I think, because it was such a good book. I actually rated it 5 stars on Goodreads, so we're starting this book video off with a nice 5-star review. I loved it. I cannot wait for the second one to come out. Definitely recommended. Okay, next I read one of my favorite authors. Okay, I won't say I'm growing tired of romance as a genre because I do like it and appreciate it still, but I've realized that there are only a few authors that I can 100% count on really enjoying not just the romance and the tropes, but the actual story of their book. And one of those is Ali Hazelwood. And I read her 3 set books of her novellas. It's the package is called Loathe to Love You. And so it's 3 different novellas within this book. So the first one is called Under One Roof, and it's a fun story about 2 people that happen to inherit half of a house. They're strangers, they've never met before. They're connected to the person who did own this house but passed away. And they have to come together and learn to be roommates, even though they're polar opposites, and hilarity ensues. It's a really fun read, a really quick read. I gave that one 4 stars. I loved it, but it wasn't blow my mind amazing. Now, the other 2 novellas that are part of this are blow your mind amazing. I loved them. They were, especially for a novella, extremely emotionally impactful and had a lot of depth to them in a short number of pages. I was very impressed by both. The first one is called Stuck With You. It's about a civil engineer and her like nemesis in the career field. They develop a relationship and they get stuck in an elevator. It is so good. I'm not going to tell you any more about it than that. You just have to read it. It is so good. I gave it 5 stars. Okay, and then the last one that's part of this 3 novella series is called Below Zero, and it's about a NASA, what is she? I think she's like an aerospace engineer for NASA, and one of her colleagues who, oh my gosh, this might have been my favorite one. Basically, you go to like the Arctic tundra with them, and it's very heavy on the STEM focus in a good way, in a way that I thought was just so interesting and fascinating. I loved it. Their relationship was so sweet. The male character in this one specifically, I just loved him. I just loved him. Right up my alley. So, so good. I also gave it 5 stars. So I highly recommend anything written by Ali Hazelwood. I love all of her books. I haven't picked up her new young adult book. I think it's called Check and Mate. I'm a little nervous about that one just because I really don't like teen romances. Like, I am not a young adult fan at all. I do not like young adult books. They just annoy me mostly. And so I steer pretty clear of them, but I wonder if I should give that one a try simply because of how much I love Ali Hazelwood's writing. If you've read it, let me know down below. And honestly, it may not even be out yet, but if you happen to have read it and you liked it, let me know why down below if I should read it or not. But definitely recommend her 3 novella stories. So, so good. Loved them. Then, to keep the Ali Hazelwood train rolling, I read her newest book, Love Theoretically. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I just love her. She, romance books can feel like they're copy and paste, the exact same tropes over and over again, or the exact same style of writing over and over again. And that's all fine and good. Like, there is a place for that. And I, for the most part, enjoy reading romance. But Ali Hazelwood, just something about the specific way that she writes and builds characters and stories is so endearing. Like, she is just such an endearing writer. You instantly connect to her characters. It's witty, it's funny. She really is pretty copy and paste. Like, she writes the exact same way and pretty, I wouldn't say similar stories, but certainly everything she writes is within the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math field. And so it can feel very similar, but every single one of her stories just hits me right in the heart. And I love her so much. And this book did not disappoint. This one is probably her most convoluted storyline. And at first when I read the just like general synopsis of what this book was about, I honestly was like, oh, is this gonna be the one that's a dud that I'm not gonna like? Because it didn't excite me to read. In fact, I'll just read it to you. So it says, the many lives of theoretical physicist Elsie Hanaway have finally caught up with her. By day, she's an adjunct professor, toiling away at grading labs and teaching thermodynamics in the hopes of landing tenure. By other day, Elsie makes up for her non-existent paycheck by offering her services as a fake girlfriend, tapping into her expertly honed people-pleasing skills to embody whichever version of herself the client needs. So I hate fake dating. I hate that as a trope. I was not excited to read this beyond it just being Ali Hazelwood, and I knew that I loved her as a writer. This plot line didn't excite me. You guys, it is so good. The second I started reading it, I was sucked right in. The character is so lovable. She's so quirky. She works really hard and her life is not very easy. And what ends up happening is she becomes really good friends with the guy she fake dates. And the reason she's fake dating him is because he has a very hard to please family and he's sick of getting asked if he has a girlfriend and when he's gonna settle down, and so he hires her to be his fake girlfriend to his family. She ends up meeting his older brother and they form a relationship. Turns out he's also on the hiring committee for the new job she's trying to get. It is a whole mess of mess and it is so freaking good. The characters in this are fabulous. Once again, I gave this book 5 stars because I think everything that she's written so far pretty much has been either 4 or mostly 5 stars, and this one is no exception. You should certainly read it if you like Ali Hazelwood. it does not disappoint. Okay, next I read The True Love Experiment, which is the new book by Christina Lauren, who are actually two authors named Christina and Lauren. I've read some of their books, not all of their books, and I really like all of them. Actually, this is a second in a loose series. You don't have to have read the first one, obviously, because I didn't even know this was a follow-up to, I think the first one is called, oh, let's see, I'm not gonna remember. The Soulmate Equation. So I need to read that one now too. But this is about Fizzy, who was apparently a side character in that first book that everybody just fell in love with and was like, will you please write a book about Fizzy? It is such a good book. It's about a writer who's kind of lost. She writes romance books and she's kind of beloved by her fan base, but she's kind of given up on the concept of love, and she's asked to be on an original reality series about her trying to find love, and she agrees to it, and it's just what ensues from that situation. She develops a relationship with the producer of that series, who's not super gung-ho about producing a reality show, but kind of has to keep his job. And it was a very unique storyline in terms of the romance genre. I thought it was pretty original, and I loved the concept. I love a good reality TV series, so I knew I would like this when I read what the synopsis was. But man, just so much heart in this book. I think it maybe even made me cry. It just seemed very genuine. It seemed like something that, even though it was a little like unique and weird, that it actually would happen in real life. I really loved it. The characters were very well constructed, very layered. I just really love their writing, and this book did not disappoint. I can't remember if I gave it 4 or 5 stars. Let me check. I gave it 5 stars. It was so good. Okay, next up, I read the book Red Rising, which I had heard a lot of buzz about this series. I had heard it compared to Hunger Games and Divergent, and I like both of those series, so I decided to give it a try. I've been really into like almost sci-fi type stuff. I read the whole Throne of Glass series, and that made me like crave more of that fantasy, science fiction kind of vibes. And so I thought, oh, this is a great series I could get into and try. I couldn't even tell you what it was about. What I will say is the first about 100 pages, as you see this colony on Mars established, and you meet the people and you learn about all the suffering that they go through, but how like heartfelt they are and how close and tight-knit, and how they formed this really special community. And you see how much the main character loves his wife and just like is so sweet to her. They have the cutest relationship. All that's built up in the first, I would say, about 75 to 100 pages. And I loved it. Like, I was gung-ho. I was ready to learn more about these people and follow them on a journey. But spoiler alert, skip a little bit ahead if you don't want to know what happens next in Red Rising, in case you want to read it. But as soon as you kind of fall in love with these characters and their relationships and want to learn more about their lives, the freaking wife is killed, and apparently that's just the catalyst for the series starting, and the main character gets transported away from his entire family and community and way of life, goes through a transformation to become a completely different type of person, and goes through this essentially long con journey to get revenge on the people that are bad in the society. And I just thought it was so convoluted, so slow. I didn't care about him after he lost everything, and there's not really a big comeback story. It's almost like you meet him as he is, and then you go through a transformation with him to be a completely different character, and there's nothing left of who he was before. And it's just so jarring, and it was weird to read, and it was too sci-fi for me, okay? So if you like sci-fi, you probably would like this series. And I've heard that as the series continues, it keeps getting better and better, and the world build out is a lot more in the continuation of the series, but I have zero interest in reading the rest of this series. I thought it was boring. It was very hard to get through, hard to understand what was even happening at times. And I am a very smart reader. Like, I can pick things up very quickly, but this one just like I did not connect with it. I don't think it was badly written, but I just didn't connect with it at all, have no desire to finish it. I think I gave it 2 stars because it was that boring. And I do not give 2 stars lightly, okay? I didn't like it. Don't recommend. Okay, next I read Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. And huge caveat, I have zero things in common with her. I do not ascribe to anything she does, pretty much. But I love, like, one of my favorite things is reading stories about people who are completely different than me. That's why I'm so obsessed with Mormons and learning about Mormonism and following Mormons online, because it just, like, it blows my mind how different they are and learning all their customs, and I just find it fascinating. That's why I like reality shows. That's why I watch, like, Indian Matchmaker and all the, like, cult documentaries Eric and I watch. Like, I am fascinated by how people live, especially when it's unfathomably different from me. And I will say, I watched 19 Kids and Counting growing up. I loved that show. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Obviously, it's extremely problematic and I don't support it now. And at that time when I watched it, I had nothing in common with them whatsoever, but I found them endlessly fascinating because they were so different from me. This was before really any of the bad stuff about the Duggar family came out. And now I just think, especially the parents, are horrible people. But Jill specifically is the Duggar who's spoken out against her family, and not really her family, but her parents and specifically her dad. And her book was fascinating. I was skeptical going into reading Jill's book, but hers is not religious really at all. It's mostly just a memoir. That's how it reads, like the story of her life, which obviously the extreme religion that her parents ascribed to and made her follow as a child is part of that story. But it was just endlessly fascinating to hear about how she grew up and the standards that were put upon her, all the suffering she went through, and her really being tricked into committing to the reality television show as an adult especially, and not being paid for the work that she did on the show, and her very, very tumultuous relationship with her father. It was really eye-opening and jarring to hear about. Not surprising because they just seem like horrible people, but man, it was fascinating the amount of information she shared. And really it was clearly to take back ownership of her life and relinquish the control that her father had over her for so many years, and really still operates that way with a lot of her siblings. It's very sad. It's a very, very sad situation. I thought it was extremely impactful and powerful for her to share her story, to read about it. Honestly, I thought she did it in an extremely respectful, not inflammatory way. She presented the facts as they were true to her. I certainly recommend it to anybody. It was just so interesting to hear about and to learn, but I really, really loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars. It really was a great book. I was very pleasantly surprised. Okay, next I read this book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Oh my gosh. This is one of the best books I've read all year. It was so freaking just like mind-blowing. Honestly, it was mind-blowing to read. So she is a therapist, and she details her journey as a therapist specifically through 4 different cases that she's worked on with 4 different patients. Vastly different stories. There is a big shot TV producer who has a lot of trauma from an experience he had with one of his children, and it's led him to just be so stressed out and disconnected in all his relationships, and she slowly helps him unpeel all the layers of his trauma. And another client is a 70-year-old woman who failed in her life, had 3 horrible marriages, doesn't speak to any of her 4 children because she was not a very present mother with them, and she's decided that she's just going to end her life in a year if things don't start getting better. And it kind of chronicles her journey to develop relationships and confront her past and learn to forgive herself. Oh, I loved her story. That woman was just so sweet and heartbreaking to read about. And then the third one is a young woman who is in her 20s, has a pretty addictive personality, has some trauma with her father and abandonment issues, and that translates into her relationships with men. She has a history of alcoholism in her family and struggles with that. Just kind of like learning to get your life together in your 20s, and her story was really great. And then one of a woman who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, a very lively personality, a woman in I think her late 30s, early 40s, married, just very impactful story of how she intentionally chose to live the last tail end of her life through the lens of their therapy sessions with the author. You just learn about like human nature and heartbreaking and heartwarming and everything in between experiences of what it's like to be a human on the planet. But at the same time that she's giving us this background in the history and the experience of therapy through her client's eyes as the therapist, she's also documenting her experience going to therapy in her 40s after a very shocking breakup that she had in her life, and meeting a new therapist, going through the process herself on the patient side of things and what's happening in her life simultaneously to these 4 cases she's working. It was one of the most impactful books I've ever read. It taught me a lot about the process of therapy and what that's like. It made me kind of want to finally explore that myself even. It kind of took the taboo of what therapy is away for me. This woman is just so, oh my gosh, she is such an incredible writer and human being. I just loved it so much. I learned so much. I will say, it's nonfiction, obviously, and it reads like a story. It really does. There are certain moments where it's not the most fast-paced page-turner book, but every word written on every page means something and is so intentional. And wow, just such a fabulous book. Certainly recommended. Definite 5, 6-star read for me. I loved this book so stinking much, and wow, what a great thing to read. It really impacted me. It was fabulous. You should read this book. Okay, and then last, my number 10 book that I've read recently is, oh my gosh. I read The Summer I Turned Pretty, which obviously is all the rage right now. There's a new, I don't know if it's on Prime or Netflix or what it's on, but obviously there's a series, TV show out right now chronicling this series. It's a young adult book. I knew that I was pretty skeptical about it going in because of that, but I just thought, I've seen so much about it online. It's a super quick read. It's under 300 pages. I thought, maybe just knock out the first one and see if I like it. You guys, I shouldn't have done that. It was a waste of my time. I hated it. I thought it was so dumb. I was like, why am I even reading this? This isn't even a story. Like, what is this? It's such a young adult book, such a young adult book. All the tropes, all the drama, all the stupid stuff that doesn't matter. Like, I'm sure that plenty of people love it and get a lot from it. But honestly, what I kept thinking the entire time I was reading it was, I'm supposed to take this romantic book seriously, and the protagonist is a 15-year-old child. What? I just kept thinking the whole time, like, these are children. These are children. This is not interesting to me. This is weird. Just like, was like, why am I interested in this? I'm a grown adult human. I should not be reading this. This is for teenagers to read. It was just weird. And there was nothing like overtly inappropriate about it either. Like it was a very tame, very calm book. There's some like underage drinking and smoking, but nothing like, no explicit anything really. It was very tame. But even still, I was like, I am connecting with this 0% because she is literally 15 and all of her problems pretty much actually won't matter in 5 years when she's a grown adult human. It's not for me, okay? If it's for you, that's great. Good for you. Go for it. I will not be continuing the series. It was a waste of my time. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. I think I also gave it 2 stars. So really, we are all over the spectrum here with amazing, wonderful 5, 6 star even reads and some not so great duds as well. So what can I say? I'm a decisive person. I know what I like and I know what I don't like. So I'm glad I read most of them. A lot of the 4 and 5 star books I just thought were some of the best books I've read all year. I loved them. Let me know down below. I'm always looking for good book recommendations. I like fantasy, I like romance, I like some mystery, I like just women's fiction. So hit me up down below with any recommendations you might have that I should read. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any more. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!